Hey, I logged on early. I'll be back.
Okay.
Thanks.
To watch it, those that are not able to log on tonight. So the people from the NPRA are myself, Dennis Lynch, and Harry Schofield, and we will be splitting chores with the questions this evening. The meeting format is that we are going to commence with candidate introductions. We'd like to provide 1 minute for each candidate, excuse me, to introduce themselves. We're then going to move into a round of questions. 3 candidates will answer each question. There'll be 2 minutes to respond to those questions. We will then go into a lightning round, or what we call kind of a lightning round. So we are looking for a yes/no answer, but if you feel that it's necessary to add a sentence or 2 about background or context, feel free to do that. We will follow that with a second round of 2-minute response questions for the candidates. Following that will be our last and final round of a quasi lightning round. So what will end up happening is every candidate will be responding to 4 questions in a 2-minute format and 9 questions in the semi-lightning round. So hopefully at the end of this, residents and citizens will have heard sort of 13 responses from each candidate, and we're hopeful that will all happen somewhere in a 2-hour, maybe give or take, plus time frame. The topics, we've tried to include as many topics as we could. Certainly, I think Narragansett Peer Resident Association very focused on a number of topics related to rental registration and rental management, but we also have questions about the library, about the beach, about seniors, bulk zoning. So we think that we have tried to cover a broad enough topic list for anyone in the town that might be listening. For the audience, you'll hear in some of the questions will be phrased in a manner that is, the candidate had responded in a certain way to questionnaire. The questionnaire that we're referring to is all of the candidates were good enough to answer a 7-question questionnaire that the NPRA sent out about 2 weeks ago. So a couple of questions sort of reference that questionnaire. So we'll explain that as we get into the individual questions. So that's the format for the meeting. Would also want to tell you the format that we have for the Zoom technology. And those of you who logged on a little early saw some of our challenges already in coming into this new remote world that we're in. The audience is in view only. So because of the number of audience members, obviously we can't really have a back and forth with the audience. So they'll be in view only. You can, as an audience member, you could certainly put your hand up because that function is not disabled. But in this particular format, because of the volume of people, we're not actually going to be responding to those hands up. So wanted to make you aware of that. Hopefully all the candidates, including Harry and myself, will be on mute when we're not participating or asking questions. And if we don't have some other major technical event as we go through this amount of time, that will be surprising. So with that, that is the format that we're going to use. And so we would turn now to candidate introductions. And so everyone starts on mute. We will try to remind people to unmute when they come on to speak. And we will start alphabetically with Steve Bellows. So if Steve, would you be kind enough to unmute and a minute for the audience of who you are and why you're running.
Okay, thank you. Good evening. As a resident of Narragansett for the past 8 years, I've decided to run for town council because I care about the future direction and sustainability of this community. I bring a skill set and level of experience that may be beneficial to this position. I have a degree in accounting and an MBA in international business with 38 years of corporate experience in finance, audit, internal controls, project management, commercial trade law, and financial oversight. I've been a substitute teacher at the Narragansett High School and Pure Middle School for the past 4 years, and I'm a member of the Lions Club. I'm running for town council because I believe we need a fresh start. We just got through a competitive primary with an unprecedented 16 candidates running for town council. That alone says a lot about how the residents of Narragansett are feeling these days. The dissatisfaction is obvious. I'm an advocate for a new town library at the Belmont site in the center of town and in the heart of the pier. Improved infrastructure, sensible and environmentally conscious zoning and building codes, and a forward-looking attitude that invests in the future and sustainability of this town. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. And now, Iwa, if you could unmute and make sure that we're pronouncing your name properly.
So it's pronounced Ava, and the last name is Dzerzhinsky. So hello, my name is Ava Dzerzhinsky, as I mentioned. I am a graduate of the University of Rhode Island. I have actually been a full-time resident since 2008. I purchased my house here that I'm living in right now in 1998 because I fell in love with this area when I was going to college and renting a house in Narragansett. I have a multitude of leadership experience. I am a pharmacist by background, so I always approach things data-driven, not by emotion. I have leadership experience where I have been a director of pharmacy twice, and I currently work for the Yale New Haven Health System. And I'm running because I want to bring civility and transparency back to our town council. I want to do what's best for our town and to have the neighborhoods be the way that we want. And I'm hoping that the people see that I'm sincere in my efforts because I'm an authentic leader and I would love to be your town councilor. Thank you.
Thank you. We would turn next to Wynn Hames. If you could unmute Wynn and a minute of introduction.
There you go. New technology. I have to get used to it. Hi, my name is Wynn Hames. As long as we're talking how long we've been in town, I've been here 62 years, 64 years, actually. 2 years I just missed. I've served on a variety of committees throughout the town. I've been involved with the library, relocating to the Belmont building. Actually had a couple of initiatives that I filed to help that along. I've always tried to work for the betterment of the town, moving the town forward. There are serious issues that concern the town right now, including beach, right-of-way, the housing, student problems. All these things have to be addressed, and a lot of them have been ignored over the last 2 years. If anybody wants to get in touch with me, my number is no, they don't use phone books anymore, do they? But you can always get in touch with me however you like. I am around town, and I appreciate your vote. Thank you.
Thanks, Wynn. We're turning next to, oops, time is good. We're turning next to Laura Kelly. Stop that.
Hello, my name is Lori Kelly. You may recognize me from my years on the library board. I am a one-issue candidate. I want to say that right up front, and my issue is democracy. If you look at the town website, the financial documents, they have the voters of the town up here and the town council below them. And that's really where we need to go back to, having the council listen to the will of the people. And yes, the pesky library project, we need to fund the library. We're currently at half our budgeted budget for payroll. So we need to fund the library immediately and move to the Belmont building. I'm also for establishing an EDC immediately. We need to address the small business problems coming with COVID in this town, and it shouldn't be top to bottom. We should be engaging the public listening to them, and going for guidance. Thank you.
Dennis, you have to unmute.
Deb Kopek would be up next. I apologize. I'm the first one who failed the mute test.
That's okay. I want to just make sure before I say anything else that these earbuds are just so that you don't have to listen to my yowling cat and barking dog. I don't have anybody talking into them. Good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to be here. I have wind slightly beat because even though I haven't lived here for more than 13 years, I've been coming to Narragansett since I was 6 months old, and that was 66 years ago. So I know my way around this town pretty well. I returned to Rhode Island and settled in Narragansett 13 years ago. I retired from a career or two spanning over 40 years in 2016. I spent most of my career working in financial services and spent the last 9 years in the town of Westerly, including 5 years as Human Resources Director for Westerly Public Schools, and on 2 occasions for several months, the town of Westerly. Because of my extensive municipal and financial experience, I believe I can offer insight and expertise to the town council. Since retiring, I've been very active, including mentoring adults with learning English as a second or third language, teaching adult classes, including civics, being a co-leader of the South County Huddle, a group dedicated to good government and social justice. And in my spare time, I knit blankets and hats for newborns and spend time with my extensive family. I've been married to my husband for 44 years, and we have 3 adult children who don't live in town, which has its points, but they sure do love to come here. So I agree with Lori about the library entirely, and I absolutely agree with her that an absolute essential is to return this town to good democracy, democratic government. Thank you.
Thank you, Deb. We'll turn next to Jill Lawler. Jill?
Thank you, Dennis, and thank you to the PR residents. I just want to make note that this is the only forum that this council will have during the election to actually be seen by the town residents. So it's great that almost everybody could make it here tonight so that we could be heard. I'm running because I need to have a 3rd term to continue the good work that I've done on the council. I really have 3 buckets that I want to talk about tonight. The first one is, with me, residents are always going to come first. And the focus I have for that is to protect our neighborhoods. I think that we need to hire someone. We can't just have our building inspector do it, to oversee the 3 and 4 student ordinances. We need to regulate Airbnb. It's not a good thing to have hotels coming into our residential neighborhoods. We need to look at our rental registration database and revise that. As far as fiscal responsibility, we need to take the tax dollar that we have coming into the town and balance it equally among all town assets. We need to build a library, yes, I said library, that's going to meet our town needs and our town budget. I'd like to sell Pure Liquor, their store, so we can have the money that was used for emergency funds back in our quiver, engage back in our tax dollars from that, as well as return our CAM fees. And as far as quality of life, I fully endorse the beach workshop that came last week with Tom Warren's groups. I'll move forward with all of those. And again, I like to make sure that I'm going to support our small businesses in my work that I've done with the Chamber of Commerce. And last but not least, our great Port of Galilee and our commercial fishermen. So thanks again to Dennis and your group.
Thank you, Jill. Rick Lima is up next.
Thank you once again. Richard Lima. I was born here in Narragansett in 1958. I'm running for re-election to focus on the future of Narragansett and to concentrate on improving a quality of life and to continue to make Narragansett our home. Last 2 years have been challenging. COVID has damaged our economy and made it very difficult for small businesses and our families to thrive. We as a town have faced challenges to coastal and increased renter and vacationers to our town. We have made necessary cuts in our town budget so we as taxpayers can continue to meet financial obligations while enjoying the quality of life. Our beach is our biggest asset, and it is the right of our residents to use it and enjoy this asset. It's a privilege for non-residents. The library has been a decisive topic that has been manipulated to make people believe I do not want a library. This statement is false. I maintain that I support a library that is affordable to the taxpayers. The voters have the ultimate decision in November, and the voters are empowered through their vote to chart the course of the library and its location. I will support the outcome of that referendum. I also want to know that we had a great budget that we balanced in 2020 and 21. I negotiated contracts for Council 94, town employees, and Narragansett Police, and will continue to put hard work into being a council member. Thank you.
Thank you, Rick. We'll turn next to Patrick Murray.
Okay. Good evening. First of all, I want to thank NPRA for having me here tonight and for all the candidates and the people viewing at home. This is my 5th run, 3rd term, and coming up on the end of the 3rd term. And I'm 4th generation resident. Been here quite some time. I just want to ask Jeannie Marsh. I'm not colorblind, so I'm not gonna make you flip those signs around too much. So most people know who I am, what I'm about. So let's get this thing rolling. Thank you.
Thank you, Patrick. And Jesse Pugh is up next.
Thanks, Dennis. I appreciate it. Just wanted to echo what everyone else said about appreciating the time you guys put into putting this together. Typically, we'll have 3 debates or forums in an election, and this year we only have the 1. So it's pretty valuable, and appreciate you guys doing it. So my name is Jesse Pugh. I served my 1st term the last 2 years, and I am looking forward to the chance to serve another 2 years for the community. I moved to Narragansett in 1990, not born here, but have been here for quite a while. Me and my wife moved back with our kids in 2012. So we have 2 daughters in elementary school. The reason why I ran the first time 2 years ago was because I was starting to notice how hard it was becoming for other families to move to town and live here full time. So that's always really the concept and the issue that kind of informs and drives the decisions that I make on the council. Outside of that, I'll keep it high level for now, but the library, that's an issue. I do support moving that to the Belmont building and keeping Pure Liquors in their current space. Coastal access is something that's become a bigger issue for the town. So I'm looking to help expand opportunities for people to enjoy the coast here in our community and in Rhode Island. I'll stop because I see the red side. I have some other things to speak on, but I'll wait for the forum for that. So thank you guys.
Thank you, Jesse. So now after the introductions, we are going to move into the 2-minute response questions. We did want to be a little more laissez-faire with the introductions, but we will ask you to hold to the 2 minutes and don't make Janine's arms get too tired as she's holding up that last sign. We will try to ask you to wrap it up once we do get past the 2 minutes. So we're going to ask Harry Schofield to unmute and to ask 3 candidates the first 2-minute response question.
Well, good evening, everyone. And just to echo, Dennis, thank you all for coming and for participating. And we hope to make this a productive evening for everyone. The first question is for Eva, for Lori Kelly, and for Jesse Pugh. The question is, Narragansett now has 2 ordinances on the books to limit the number of individuals residing in a rental property. Even if one of these ordinances is revised or repealed, there will still be a need for new enforcement. Would you support the town devoting more resources, potentially a full-time position, for rental compliance and monitoring? And what would that enforcement look like? And Eva, you go first.
So I would, if there was a need for it, I would like to see that. I actually support the 4. I'm actually kind of put that as as one of the things that I support is 4 individuals. I do think that the town could definitely do more to enforce current noise and parking ordinances by establishing a code enforcement task force with participation from public safety officials, university officials, residents, renters, and stakeholders. And my problem with the recent change to 3 unrelated individuals is not so much the number itself, but rather the following. The town council rushed to the public hearing with sufficient public participation before all who wanted to speak had a chance to speak about the issue. I thought the town council ignored the recommendation of the planning board, which determined the new ordinance was not consistent with the comprehensive master plan. And the ordinance was rushed with very little community input. I think that we do need to work with the university. If we do need enforcement, I think that that would be an option to do, because I think that's the first step in making sure that everyone's compliant and that we're all good neighbors. So that would be my recommendation.
All right, Eva, thank you. Lori Kelly, you're next with the same question.
Yes, thank you. I too support mostly the 4 unrelated and not the way that we rashly jumped in to go to 3 student limitations. And for many of the same reasons. I mean, I understand now, although I have not seen the lawsuits, that there are lawsuits regarding that. We don't have enforcement of it, and we have ignored the planning board and their years of testimony and working on the 4 unrelated. So again, it's nothing new that I can offer here, except to say that I think it should be a multi-pronged effect, a multi-pronged program to enforce anything that's going forward. And certainly people have the right for quiet enjoyment in their neighborhoods. So I do support the end goal. It's how we can work to get there. Ordinances are important. Of course, the enforcement, landlord responsibility is key here, and the student accountability. And I know that there is an organization in town that has reached out with the police and URI and is hopefully having more of a conversation now that we're faced with COVID, and URI has to come to the table and sit here with adults and meet with us as to come to an agreement on these issues. As far as hiring full-time, I mean, you're talking to someone whose budget has been devastated. So I am not, going to say, oh yeah, I guarantee that I'm going to hire someone next day. But without enforcement, none of these rules are going to make any difference at all. Nothing we do here with the rental registration forms or anything without enforcement. So again, I would like to sit at the table with some of the people, that stakeholders and the planning board, to get their advice. And I think we do have a real way forward here. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Lori. And Jesse, you're the last one to answer, the same question.
Great, thanks, Harry. So I would support an enforcement staff person. I'm not going to say it's an officer necessarily. I do think that these ordinances, however they shake out, are going to be very much complaint driven, but there should be a person who manages the ordinance and the compliance in general. So I don't think this is something that the building inspector should be doing. I don't think it's something that the police should be doing. I think there should be someone overseeing compliance in general. I can't say if it's going to be full-time or part-time. There's a lot more that still has to happen before we get to that point. And unfortunately, that didn't happen during the discussions as it should have. But we'll need to have a workshop, multiple workshops. We're going to need to talk about the rental registration forms, Airbnb compliance, because remember, the 4 unrelated is unrelated. That's not a college student ordinance. So that would affect Airbnbs as well. URI partnerships, there's just a lot that still needs to be discussed. So we're going to need to hold some workshops and see if this position is full-time or part-time, but I do support creating a position for enforcement for sure.
Okay, we're going to move to the second question, and the candidates that are being asked that question are Steve Ballas, Jill Lawler, and Will Haynes. And the question is, it really relates to town center. So there's been substantial change in proposed development for the Boone Street area. This includes the recent announcements of building both a 20-room and a 4-room hotel. Is Boone Street the new town center? What are your thoughts on this development? Are we moving in the right direction? And it's really about, what's your vision of the future in terms of where commerce takes place in Narragansett? So First up is Steve for 2 minutes, please.
For that extension through Boone Street, I think it's something that we probably should have done in the past, minus the Narragansett Avenue, and there's a lot of ruckus over that. So I do support that from the old train station down to the Pier Market. But I do think that the Pier Market should be incorporated into that. Like I said, I think the new library would act as an anchor for future businesses. We could probably either sell or convert the old library into some other businesses there. I still think there's room to grow in the pier with certain businesses. So I am for that. It seems to me like a really nice corridor, a nice fit from the old train station down to the Pier Market Square. I'd like to try and see attract other types of businesses in here as well. I mean, a microbrewery would be nice down there. I mean, Peacedale has their own microbrewery. I think it'd be nice to have one in the pier area as well. But I do think a combination of that pier area and probably to just look at some of the other structures in there, like the old movie theater. It just seems like there could be a little bit more done business development from there right out to the old train station. So I'm in favor of supporting that and helping it to grow.
Thank you, Steve. Jill, the same question for you, please.
Sure. Thank you, Dennis. So Boone Street is an interesting project. As a matter of fact, I was just out at Boone Street along with the chamber director maybe about 3 weeks ago to have a meeting with some of the Boone Street merchants. Boone Street is I believe, is something that we haven't enhanced enough. We have Wakefield, and we see what Wakefield does in the winter, in the summer. They have a great downtown area. They string lights, they have parties, they bring people in, and it's a center of commerce. And I think that Boone Street could be our center of commerce. One of the boutique hotels I find especially beautiful that is being put up. And I do like the idea of bringing in some more stores to the Boone Street area, as do the merchants. As a matter of fact, last week I met with the chief of staff for the lieutenant governor, and we made arrangements for the lieutenant governor to come down next Wednesday to come and see some of our businesses in town who actually did a great job during COVID. And one of the areas that we want to bring him to is to Boone Street. The idea is that some of the merchants, not all, but some of the merchants really liked was to have some type of a winter gathering when we have the Festival of Lights in downtown Narragansett, to be able to bring people to Boone Street and see what we can do to rejuvenate the area. I think it's something that could bring a great feel. Also, as far as the Pier Marketplace itself, as everyone knows, probably I'm an advocate for selling the pier liquor, as I mentioned before, but also to potentially look at either rehabbing the current library and or moving it to the community center, which would then free up a great corner space of the current library that we could bring certainly a store. It'd be a natural place for a merchant. So I know that we can drive some more commerce into Narragansett. Unfortunately, with Gilbane having owned the complex and the CAM fees that have been so expensive for many merchants, it has driven people out of the opportunity. But I do believe that we can work with some stores and get commerce back into Narragansett.
Thank you, Jill. Wynn, the same question as it relates to the direction of development at Boone Street and the town center for Narragansett.
Well, as far as the new hotel that's going there, I haven't seen all the plans, but I know, I look at the one that Jimmy Durkin put up down at the break, and that's a fantastic addition to the town. Looking at the one that they're proposing there, my biggest concern, I think, is parking. And even the further development of Boone Street, what are you going to do for parking? You can have all the great shops in the world, but there's no place for somebody to park their car. They're not going to come in there. I think it's always been very undeveloped. All the years I've lived here, you've had Terminations, which is now PJ's. You had a bowling alley across the street. You had a nightclub across the street. You had a variety of things there. Everything can be upgraded, and I think it could be a mini center of the town. There's no doubt about that. I'm not familiar with you said there's a residence being built there. I don't know if I'm familiar with that. I am familiar with the train station, and I'm very familiar with the construction company that's doing that work. And I think that's going to be a tremendous asset to that area as well. As far as the peer area, I'm probably the only one, and then probably me and Johnny Miller were the only ones at the hearings for Gilbane when they originally proposed all that. And that was supposed to be copied after the Mystic Village, which is on 95. I'm just going through some of Richard Vangermish's history of all that, and it's very interesting when you go back and see the actual history of what's happened down there. The library, I think, is going to be the center of attention. It's going to draw more people down there, but we can't turn the buildings around and face the ocean. They face away from the ocean, so we have to do the best we can possibly do down there. I think the library, again, will be a tremendous draw, a tremendous asset to the area, and I think it's going to be a red sign I just see. So I have to stop right now. Thank you.
Thanks, Win. We will turn it to Harry.
All right, question 3. This question goes to Deb Kopak, Rick Lima, and Patrick Murray. So senior residents make up a substantial portion of the population of Narragansett. Are you satisfied with the facilities and services presently in place? And what specific changes would you call for seniors? So Deb, you get to kick it off.
Well, thank you. I believe Dr. Fauci qualifies me as a senior, so I might have a little something to say about this. I have not actually used any of the senior facilities in Narragansett, but I have been involved with a little bit with the one in South Kingstown, with the new senior center in South Kingstown. And I do hear complaints about the lack of services for seniors in Narragansett. So it's something that definitely requires some evaluation, some study. One of the thoughts that I've had about that would be to work in conjunction with South Kingstown, because they have such a large facility and because it's very accessible to Narragansett seniors. And if I remember correctly from the last town council meeting, we're purchasing a new vehicle for senior activities, and that might be a way to take a look at solving some of the problems that we have with serving the senior population in the town. But I think that there's a lot that can be done, and I think we need to do a better job of ensuring that seniors have access to a good quality of life. One of those ways is actually to improve our library and make it more accessible to seniors. There's a senior facility across the street from the current library, and I know the seniors take a great deal of interest in what happens at the library, both events that happen and access to all sorts of media. So I think there's an awful lot that can be done to improve the lives of seniors. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Deb. Rick, you're next. Same question.
So thank you. So yes, we do have a great senior population in our town. And I was happy when my mom was living here and was able to use the activities up at the community center. We already share a lot with South Kingston, their community center. But again, community center, we just put a ton of money into it, and we got it up and running, and it's a beautiful location. People should go there and see it. They now have a meal program that's was implemented before COVID. I think they served over 1,000 meals into the town, and we bought a new bus. Again, this was one of the reasons why I wish to put a library up by the community center. A library up by the community center, both could share resources for seniors and other young adults and children of our community. We would be able to have a full transportation system that we can implement. We would be able to have after school, before school activities, programs that could be shared between both the library and the community center. With the community center meal program, we could actually, if COVID continues and we don't know how long this is going to be, we could actually do a home delivery of meals and a delivery of books that are needed to seniors who don't want to get out and don't want to be exposed. So just imagine, we would have two big resources in a location that we would have transportation. We would be able to do a meal program, a book delivery program, outdoor activities, after school programs for both young children and adults. And we'd be able to combine this all together in one location and really reduce the cost to the taxpayers of this town. Those are the things we should start focusing on for the future of the town, is how we can give the taxpayers the most bang for their buck and put it all together. Thank you.
Thank you, Rick. And Patrick, you get to round out the third answer to the same question.
Okay, thank you, Harry. Okay, I don't know. Seniors are doing pretty good in Narragansett. We got, we just rehab the outside of the senior center. And there are many programs. They go on trips. And as Ricky said, we just started serving meals over there. Certainly that helped out quite well for COVID-19 recently. Just purchased a new bus. What's that, $65,000 bus. Also, there's also a program that's little known that we have is if you're a senior and you need a new roof or a new furnace, there's still money there. I believe it gets refunded every year, I think by the state or the feds, where you can take a low interest loan and to help with repairs for elderly people who do own a home and need some assistance in that way. So it's a great place to grow old here in Narragansett. So, that's why I'm not going anywhere. So, thank you.
Okay. Moving to question 4. And this is for Eva, Wynn, and Lori Kelly. You've indicated in our questionnaire, the questionnaire I referenced earlier that you were good enough to fill out on a number of topics, that you are in favor of the pending effort to implement bulk zoning. Could you please explain in layman's terms your definition of bulk zoning as proposed for our town and how its passage would affect the residents? So Eva, if you could go first, please.
Okay, thank you. So I believe it's very important for residents to define the character of their neighborhoods. In some locations, it may be appropriate to promote density in the town center or in mixed-use zones where there's access to mass transit. In other cases, it is appropriate for less intense development. So neighborhood goals derived from public input should be outlined in the comprehensive master plan. And I would want to ensure that our zoning regulations embody the spirit of our master plan. We have to pay close attention to those seeking variances to our current zoning. And I would expect that the zoning board of review to evaluate every variance individually in the context of the neighborhood's vision.
Okay, thank you. Wynn, your thoughts on bulk zoning and what it means to the residents?
I think it's aimed at your 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 bedroom homes. I think it's a good way to defeat that. There should be some kind of way of knowing what a person's going to do with a home if they come in want to build a 6-bedroom home. Don't know how you would do that, but I look at my son who's got 4 kids. If he goes someplace, he wants a 6-bedroom home. You can't just put a limit on certain amounts of bedrooms, but what you can do is through zoning, create your setbacks, create your side yards, your front yards, so that only a certain amount of that land can be used for construction. There's still 10,000 square foot lots in town. They're fall, or 15,000 I know of, that they fall under a 40,000, they're in a 40,000 square foot zone, but you shrink down that zone to fit that house and you end up being able to build a much larger house. It happened across the street from me. There's a very large house on a very, very small lot. The best way to do that is through zoning, rezoning, finding out what the person's interests are. If it's an outside builder that lives in Hartford and he's building a 6-bedroom house here or a 10-bedroom house here, he's not going to be using it for a residence. And you also have to look at it and say, all right, is this a rooming house or is this a home? There has to be a definition there. So that's, to me, is the bulk zoning is trying to rein in the runaway building we have throughout this town. Like I said, I've been here since I moved to this town. There was 3,500 people in this town. 3,500 people. You could, after Labor Day, you could walk down the street of Bone Street naked and nobody would ever see you. In this town, I watched it grow and grow and grow and grow. And it hasn't been a good experience. Thank you, Red Sign.
Okay, thank you, Win. So Lori, could you respond to the same question related to bulk zoning, the sort of layman's definition and the impact on the town?
Yes, thank you. So my understanding of bulk zoning is really the layman's impression of bulk zoning, and that is to take control of our town and our neighborhoods and prevent some of the overdevelopment that's impacting the quiet enjoyment of our residents. So again, there's a lot of different neighborhoods here where people have purchased small houses and knocked them down and then really just stretched from one end to the other end of the lot, whether it's for, you know, their own vacation home or they are doing it indeed for our Airbnb or college rental. I mean, those are the type of things that we have to look to the future and try to prevent our town from moving away from more families, more people in school. This is one of those things in the toolbox that I think is really important, because we cannot social engineer what we want today by passing a lot of ordinances now. We really have to anticipate what we didn't like about the zoning ordinances and the way the town has moved, and what we can do to sort of move people back to single family homes that are respectful of their neighborhoods and fit in architecturally. I don't know, how am I doing on time? Okay, so that's pretty much it. I think that looking forward to the future, I think there's probably other things, other ordinances that we can look at for particular neighborhoods, as far as which neighborhoods would have which restrictions on them. That I don't know, because I don't know all the answers in zoning and planning, but that's how I would define bulk zoning and why it is important to Narragansett. Thank you.
Thank you, Lori.
All right. So the next question is for Steve Bellows, Jill Lawler, and Jesse Pugh. And it sort of, you know, follows on that theme. Application-based rental services such as Airbnb, VRBO, FlipKey, and HomeAway are listing almost 1,000 properties in Narragansett for short-term stays in a room or the entire residence. What does this mean to quality of residential life in Narragansett, and what should be done? Different aspect of the same issue. And so, Steve, you're the first answerer of that question.
Great question, Harry. I saw that firsthand. I worked for the U.S. Census here in town for the entire month of August and beginning of September. And I saw firsthand a lot of Airbnbs, a lot of VRBOs, a lot of properties that are being operated as commercial activity. And they're also in residential areas. I think of all of them that I looked at, there's probably one that was actually classified as a business. And these are properties that there's no resident there ever. There's some out-of-state owners, even some local owners. But I do believe that if you're operating as a commercial activity, that you should probably be paying the business tax rate, not the residential rate. If you look at the IRS code, there's a 14-day rule. There's all kinds of things, 10% of the number of days that you've rented in there as far as being occupied by yourself. It's such a good deal in town here that not only is there one property that an investor buys, there's up to 5. So when you're operating 5 businesses in town and they're in residential areas, they're businesses. So I do think that we should be taxing them at the business rate. And there are quite a few out there. I was surprised at the number of properties that are actually running as businesses as compared to college rentals or just seasonal rentals in the summer. So it's quite a bit.
Should So should tax be the only control, or should, zoning play a factor as well?
Well, from a zoning standpoint, I think it gets back to, especially over in places like Eastward Look. I mean, you've got some really dense areas there. I mean, they are, to me, you're looking at a house in particular. It's got 6 bedrooms. There's 2 beds in each room. And maybe the one across the street is a 4-bedroom. The dining room has been converted into a bedroom, and the garage is converted into a bedroom. So I think those could be taken care of with the 4 unrelated or the 3 unrelated student rental policies.
Okay, thank you. Jill, next on the roster for the same question.
Okay, thanks, Harry. So you asked, what does it mean for a neighborhood? I can tell you what it means firsthand because it happens in my neighborhood. It means that every single week, different people are coming in, and they're coming in for vacation, and they're coming in and they are staying, and they're disrupting neighborhoods. They're also uses of it too. They're increasing our water and our sewer uses. If people are coming into our residential neighborhoods and they're bringing their extended family and friends, they're using more water. They're the ones that were taking all the outdoor showers when we had our water ban this summer, watering their lawns. The Airbnbs are problematic to our neighborhoods because, as Steve just mentioned, they are actually operating commercial business in a residential neighborhood. One of the things that I would like to do, and I've already asked our town manager to look into this, and he has begun, there are 2 towns in the state that also have the problem, and that would be Newport and Middletown. And one approach that Newport and Middletown are doing is to actually have licensing put on these establishments. If Airbnb knows that there's a law or rule, they are requiring anyone in Airbnb to put it on. So one thing that Newport does is they have their Airbnbs have to be licensed as a bed and breakfast. With this comes fees, with this comes inspections. So there are some things that we can do zoning wise, Harry, to answer your question, to attach on some more requirements for these homes, but they're not here to be a neighbor. They're not here to be part of our neighborhoods. They're here to make money. And unfortunately, they're here also using our additional resources, whereas we needed water this summer and we didn't have it. We had people vacationing in our neighborhoods.
Okay, Jill, thank you. Jesse, what do these application-based rental services like Airbnb, what's your thought about their impact on the town, and what should we do to maintain quality of life in the face of them?
Sure.
Jesse, if I could, Jesse, I'm sorry to interrupt, but could I just remind everyone to go on mute if you're not speaking? We're getting a little bit of feedback. Apologies, Jesse. Go ahead.
Oh, no problem. So, this is one of those issues where I could see that although some of us have, kind of different approaches to it, we all pretty much understand that it's a big issue in town and it has to be dealt with. I may have said this before, but Airbnb, it's one of those side effects of technology. In the same way that Lyft and Uber have kind of decimated the taxi cab industry, Airbnb is having a similar effect on residential real estate because it's turned it in from what was basically a very basic shelter to a commodity, a investment. And there's a few different ways that, we can approach it. And I think it's going to take a bunch of tools. There's no silver bullet to take care of it. But, the unrelated ordinance is a way to take care of existing Airbnbs or to handle that or to regulate that. Like Jill said, licensing is another layer to put on top of it. And then the bulk zoning amendments that we spoke of. That's a way to deter future Airbnbs from being built specifically for that purpose. And I do want to kind of follow up on the layman's definition of these bulk zoning amendments because it's kind of like very vague for people that haven't paid close attention. But the basic concept for the bulk zoning amendments are we will move away from the definition and the zoning regulations on how you can build on a property. So right now it's pretty much based on setbacks, parking, and the footprint. So you have a footprint you could build on, you could go 3 stories up and you could build a 7,000 square foot house and a 10,000 square foot lot, possibly, because of those 3 levels. With bulk zoning, we'll be moving to cubic footage, so cubic square footage. So you'll have a footprint, but what's going to be taken into account is the total cubic square feet of that house. So what could have been 7,000 square feet will now be more like 3,500 or 4,000 square feet because it's not the footprint, it's the full cubic square footage. And that's going to be really effective to stop those square box houses that are getting built. When you tear down a cottage, build something like that to house 8 to 16 people. So the bulk zoning, the 4 unrelated, additional licensing, and the will to follow through with those. I think we can have an impact for those Airbnbs. Thank you.
Thank you. So we are moving to the 6th question for 2-minute response, and this will be the last of this first phase of 2-minute questions, and it's for Deb, and it's for Ricky Lima, and it's for Patrick. And the question for the 3 of you is, one of the referendum items on the ballot this year would prevent the town from selling town property before the sale is put to a vote at the next scheduled election. Do you agree or disagree, and why? So Deb, you would be up first.
Thank you. I struggle with this issue because the reason that it's up there is because of what's happened as far as the building that was purchased to house the library. But I think it's a very difficult thing to assume that the town council would not be able to conduct, a real estate action without. I struggle just trying to figure out how we could make that happen without delaying all kinds of activity. So I honestly believe that should we resolve the library process by using the building that we purchased for that reason, there's no real reason to engage in this referendum. So I would likely be against it.
Thank you. Rick, your position?
So a referendum was put on, and the night that we actually read them, I read out that the town would be any property. And I think, as people know, any property means the town wouldn't be able to sell anything, right down to a pencil. So I don't think that the referendum was written in a responsible manner. But on the other hand, I think the town, if they're going to look at the overall purchase or selling of anything in this town, they should designate what they want. And if they're going to designate that it's a $1 million building or buildings only, it should also be looked at as they should have the right to also put their input on purchasing. So it should be purchasing and selling. North Kingston is sitting in a unique situation because they have this in an ordinance. And North Kingston is now running out of places to be able to put surplus that they can't get rid of, because every 2 years they have to wait for the people, as the voters of the town, the taxpayers, to be able to decide what they wish to sell and what they wish not to sell. I think that the thought that was put into this was not a good thought. I think that you elect officials, and if officials purchase something, they purchase it. And if there's an election where new officials are appointed and they wish to sell something, then they sell it. That's why you put your faith in electing officials. But to put something on that you can't sell, property, remember, that's property. That's everything that we, the taxpayers in the town, own. And where are we going to put it all? We're going to need a big storage facility. So I personally do not support this referendum at all. Thank you.
So just in terms of the meeting format, so as Wynn is raising his hand, clearly wanting to respond to this issue. Wynn, the way that we'd like to have that handled is the next time you're in the 2-minute question period, to the extent you want to take part of that 2-minute response to speak to another topic that's been raised earlier in the meeting, or in your summary statement, the closing statement, I think that would be the best, just to cut. Otherwise, we could get too many permutations here on that. So if you could use those times to raise a topic, an issue that you might have, is how we're going to do it. So Patrick, you would be the last candidate speaking on this topic.
I didn't lose my 2 minutes, did I? No, okay. All right. Yeah, this one here I'm not a big fan of. I think the simple solution, I've been saying it right along, is you have to change the charter, but I think you should make it a super majority of the council by a 4-1 vote to sell or purchase real property, meaning real estate. And I think that would solve the solution. You go to a ballot initiative every 2 years or a special election, which costs about $35,000 to sell something, and through the voters, it just adds to the bureaucracy, and I think it would hurt the town. Thank you.
Thank you, Patrick. So we're turning it to Harry to conduct the first part of the semi-lightning round.
All right. So this round is a series of 5 questions, which you will all get a chance to answer. It is a lightning round, so we're looking for, quick answers to the questions, and we want all of you to answer the questions. Each question is going to be asked in a different order of rotation, so that everybody's not in the same, stale order of rotation all the time. We'll keep you on your feet because you won't know who's coming next, but you might figure out by the 5th question. And so anyway, to get started with this, the first question is, do you own seasonal rental property in Narragansett? And Steve Bellows is the first to answer that one. Do you own rental property in Narragansett?
No, I do not. I have a condo that I live in here, and that's about it. I have no other property ownership in this town.
Eva?
No, I do not. Just my home that I've been living, or actually have owned since '98 and have been living in since 2008.
All right, thank you. Win? Win?
No,
You don't own rental property?
I don't own seasonal rental property. I have a property that's rented. It's a low income rental, and that's same people have been there for the last 6 years.
Okay.
And everything that people do, trying to do things to rental properties affects these people who are low income people as well. So you just have to keep that in mind.
The answer to the question is you don't own seasonal rental property.
Correct.
Okay. Lori?
Sorry, I'm having a dog malfunction here. Yes, I do own my home, which I live in 12 months of the year, but I also with partners own 2 properties which have residential rentals and commercial rentals, mixed use properties. So yes.
Okay, so you do own seasonal rental properties. Okay, Deb, you're next.
I do not own any seasonal rental. I don't own any rental properties in Narragansett.
None for Deb. Jill?
I do not own any seasonal rentals. As a realtor, I do not rent any seasonal rentals. And as a realtor, I do not property manage any seasonal rentals.
All right, thank you, Jill. Ricky?
I do not own any seasonal rentals.
Patrick?
Yes, I own a duplex in the pier, which I could very easily turn into a seasonal rental, but I'm too lazy. So I got year-round tenants, and it's been working out just fine. Thank you.
All right, Jesse, you're the final.
I do not own any seasonal rental property.
Okay. All right, thank you all. That's the first question. Number 2 is, will you support a review of the tax policy with the objective of shifting a greater burden to the investor landlords? And the first to answer that question is going to be Eva. Eva, can you unmute, please?
I would think I would support a review on all tax policies, but I would not start a review with bias. So yes and no.
Yes and no. Okay. Win? Win?
Yeah, I'm trying to, what was the question again?
The question is, would you support a review of tax policy with the objective of shifting greater burden to the investor landlords?
Well, you'd have to define what an investor landlord is. I just explained to you that I have a rental property that I had a family in there for 6 years. It's low income. They get money from the town in order to pay their rent. Everything that you do.
Is someone who owns a property and rents it rather than living there.
I rent it. I don't live there. I rent the property to low-income people. Everything you do that concerns your rentals or your summer rentals or your war against the rentals affects the low income as well. So you got to be very careful about what you're trying to do.
Is it a seasonal rental, Win?
No, we just went through that. No, it's a year-round rental. It's a family of three there.
Okay.
They had kids in school, but every time you raise something, you raise their rent. Eventually, you're going to drive all these people out of town and you're going to end up with more seasonal rentals. So you have to be very careful about what you're doing as far as attacking all landlords.
Okay. Lori?
So I really liked Eva's answer, and I think she's spot on this, that you need to review tax policy, and to just wantonly raise on one group of, whether it's investor landlords or we start raising commercial rates on our restaurants and stores, that affects everything else in town. So we need to sit down and,
the question is,
I do not support increasing investor burden without a full review of all tax policy.
okay. Yeah, Deb, you'd be next.
I also agree with what Eva and Lori are saying, but also what Wynn said, that, I know I am aware of folks who have year-round rental properties, and I think that's a little bit different from what happens with seasonal with seasonal landlords. So again, if we need to look at our tax policy, we need to look at our tax policy. Singling out one entity is not the solution.
Jill, you're next.
Okay, so this really, I see this as going into two different buckets. The first one, as far as the tax policy, yes, I would support looking into that. I do believe that people that are running commercial properties in a residential neighborhood should pay more. But I also see that as far as our rental database that we're looking at right now, and the council is looking at this right now, I'd like to see that year-round rentals pay a lesser amount on a rental registration fee than a seasonal rental does. So long and short here, yes to both.
Okay, thank you, Jill. Ricky, you're next.
Yeah, I believe that we definitely need to look at the policies of seasonal rental, year-round rental, and I would support that if we did have to do some increases in the seasonal rental, that I would support that. I am also looking to reduce year-round rental to be able to bring families and be able to take care of people who lived in this town and continue to live in this town. So I support looking at increasing of business rentals, seasonal rentals in the community.
Okay, Patrick, you're on next. Unmute, Patrick.
Yes, thank you, Harry. Yeah, well, we've been down this road before. You know how I feel. I want a single tax rate with that 10% homestead, which we can increase the homestead. Instead of going after rentals, we'll just take the burden off the year-round residents. That's legal. You start taking the basket of rental properties, year-round versus summer winter rental. I think you're going to run into some lawsuits there, because tax policy for residential homes is by the state. It's dictated by the state. You stop moving stuff around, moving the goalposts around like that, it's going to be a lawsuit. So I say we unrepeal the single tax rate, which I had back. It was repealed back in the 2016, 2018 town council session. It was law for 4 months, and single tax rate lowered the tax burden to commercial property, which only equates to 5% of the income from taxes. So that was a great policy, and we could increase that homestead a little bit more and shift the burden to people who don't live here year-round and everybody else. Thank you.
All right, Jesse, you're next. Thank you, Patrick.
Thanks, Harry. I think a review of the tax policy in general is appropriate, for sure. There's nothing wrong with doing reviews and keeping an open mind. In terms of year-round rentals, I agree with Ricky, Jill, and a few others that I would like to actually help that segment, and more so than a reduced rental registration fee, because that's so minimal anyway. I think we should do a more serious incentive to get those year-round rentals converted over if possible. I may have been hanging around Patrick Murray a little too much over the last 2 years, because I have come around a little bit to the single tax rate as well. I think there is some benefit there for the town. Narragansett, unfortunately, is probably one of the worst business environments in the state at this point. Ask any business owner that operates here how hard it is to get through the year. So I think helping the businesses is for me, it's a priority. And we could do that, just like Patrick said, if it's possible to bump up that homestead exemption, we could do that without affecting the residents at all negatively in terms of their taxes. So I'm open to, a lot of ideas, but the single tax rate is intriguing to me, and those year-round rentals are important as well. Thank you.
All right, Jesse, thank you. Steve, you get the last word. Steve?
Yep, right here. Yeah, I'm in favor of reviewing the tax policy. Have a little different approach just because of the number of residential area homes that I've seen operating as businesses. I think those are the ones that we need to target. And if there are enough of them, maybe that could help to reduce the business commercial tax rate as well. But I'm in favor of reviewing the policy. At the same time, I'm in favor of keeping the homestead as well. And I guess I could entertain the single tax rate. If we went to a single tax rate, I've spoken to other tax assessors in different cities around Rhode Island, and you would need a new ordinance, and you'd probably just slap a maximum of 40% on it. And then what they do each year is they just adjust it appropriately, so it's not a burden on the year-round residents. So I'd be in favor of definitely looking at the tax policy from a number of different angles. And but I do think that there is a fair amount of this Airbnb stuff going on in neighborhoods, and I think I'd like to at least address that first and see how much of an effect that has by collecting business taxes on those properties.
Okay, listen, we're going to try to move this along a little quicker, and actually the next two questions should be things we've already talked about, and so they should be pretty brief for you folks to respond. The third question is, do you support the 3-student rental ordinance? And the first person to get that question is Win Hames. So Win, you get to lead off on this round.
Well, right now there's a lawsuit against it, challenge it in court. And I think that, we should wait until that lawsuit gets settled before we make too many comments on it. I'm very satisfied with the 4 unrelated because it takes in the 3 as well. So I would have to wait and see what happens with the lawsuit.
All right. Thank you, Will. Win, Lori, you're next.
I did speak on this previously, so no, I am not in favor of the 3-student. Thank you.
Thank you, Lori. Deborah?
I'm also not in favor of the 3 students.
Jill? Jill?
Yes, Harry, I am in favor of the 3 students. I'd like to have us have both the 3 and the 4, so our solicitors have both in their quiver.
Okay, thank you, Jill. Ricky?
Yes, I also support the 3 and the 4 because once again, we do need both ropes to be able to tighten up in these ordinances. Thank you.
All right, Ricky, thank you. Patrick?
Yes, that was question 1 on your questionnaire, and I'm a big fan of combining the 3-4 into a 4-student unrelated rental. So we have 4 students across the board or unrelated policy. It'd be easier to enforce. You're cutting down the demographics of properties you need to enforce. So, and I think it's a more comprehensive plan, but nothing works without the support of URI, administrators and students, and neighborhood groups, and 2100 Club. Thank you.
Okay, Patrick. Jesse, you're next.
So I am in favor of the 3-student ordinance in concept. This was actually probably the most difficult issue that for me personally, when we discussed it this term, It's definitely in line, I think, in concept with kind of what I personally am working for, which is to get more families into town. It was upheld by the Providence ordinance was upheld by the state Supreme Court. It was found to be legal. I did abstain from the vote ultimately, and I did that because of what I saw as procedural issues, so process issues as we voted on it. And now we see, based on this lawsuit, that a few of those reasons why I abstained were actually cited as reasons for the lawsuit. So one of them being that the ordinance changed from the first reading to the second reading. Can't do that. So I didn't think that was something that we should have voted on, which is why I abstained. Moving forward, the reason I think the 3 works better than the 4 is because what we're seeing in town now is investment properties to be used as college rentals, not just in the area they have traditionally been purchased. We're now seeing them in a lot of the North End neighborhoods because that's where the inventory is now, because they've been bought up in East Woodloch and other South End neighborhoods. So unless we do something that's going to stop the purchase of 4 and 5 bedrooms in Metatuxet, Pettaquamscot, those areas, we're not going to be able to stop it. And those neighborhoods are going to become the same thing that East Woodloch is, in my opinion. So that's why I think the 3 is going to be more effective than the 4. My opinion, I do value everyone else's opinion. I think it's definitely a valid discussion, but I am for the 3.
All right, Jesse, thank you. Okay, Eva, you get the last word.
Okay. So I actually think that the question of 3 or 4 students is the wrong question to be asking. What we really should be asking is how do we better enforce our laws to make seasonal renters more accountable to be good neighbors. And I've actually reached out to the Dean of Student Affairs, and they were willing, URI was willing to work with Narragansett. I actually am a URI alumni. I'm really involved with the university. I'm on the Alumni Engagement Council. I'm in the Women's Leadership Council. I would like to leverage that to help build a better relationship with URI and the students and making sure that they're all good neighbors.
Eva, that's really the question is do you support the 3?
Okay, so
all these other things. We're trying to get just a quick answer on.
Okay, I support 4. I think 4 is a more realistic number to deal with. So that's my answer. Sorry.
Okay. All right. Well, then we're going to go to the next round, which is, do you support the 4 unrelated rental ordinance? And that's going to start with Lori.
So quick and short answer is yes. I feel that the town has done due diligence working towards that as a goal. And I have to say, Jesse's data-driven analysis of how many rental units are 8 bedrooms and 6 bedrooms and 7 bedrooms made me realize while we do have a problem, it's a small numerical problem, and that 4 is sort of a reasonable compromise to get us back to a stock of single-family homes and away from the seasonal rentals. So yes, I would support that. Thank you.
You're next. Deborah?
On a temporary basis, I would support that too. I think that what we really need to be doing is taking a look at what others have talked about with regard to, multi-bedroom houses and working on how they exist in, I think we have some zoning issues. I think there's not enough zoning in relation to what's a residential neighborhood and community. So temporarily, yes, but I think we still really need to look at zoning and how we are going to identify what these businesses really are as businesses.
Jill?
Yes, I support the 4, and I just wanted to clarify a statement I made earlier about when I said about an enforcement officer. I don't mean actually a police officer. I mean what they currently have in Newport in Middletown right now is someone who oversees the rental problem as well as the Airbnb problem and works within the building inspector's office to make sure that those issues are enforced.
Ricky?
Yes, I do support the 4 unrelated, and I'll just throw this in because I haven't heard anything, Harry. I'll make it quick. the town needs a legal document. We do not have a legal document. The legal document we need is a rental registration form, which will be the legal document of the town. It will list everything that is needed for the rental property, the owner of the property, the people who are renting, registrations, vehicle registrations. All the information should be there, so at hand, we can attack this and we can enforce it. Thank you.
All right, Patrick, you're next. I presume it's going to be the same answer, but go ahead.
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Patrick. Jesse?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Very good. Let's see. Steve is next. Steve, your turn.
Yes, I support the 4 unrelated and think it should be aligned with the 3 student, which it should be 4 as well.
Okay. Eva?
Quick answer, yes.
Thank you. Win?
Yes.
Thank you all. Okay, last question of this round. Question number 5. Beyond roads, we always have road bonds and road work that's needed. Beyond roads, what do you feel is the next most critical infrastructure issue? You know, whether it's sewer capacity, water capacity, parking limitations, more retail. What do you think is the next most critical issue beyond roads to be addressed in order to support continued growth in rental and housing densities in Narragansett, if we presume that's going to continue to increase? And the first to answer that one is basically Deborah. So you're on first, Deborah. Can you unmute?
My mouse got away from me. My answer is definitely water, both potable water and water usage. Every year we have less and less available water in the summer, and very frequently we're being notified that our water is not necessarily as clean as we would like it to be in order to drink it.
All right, thank you. Jill, quickly.
Sure, my answer is also water and sewer. If we want to take a look, which I do, at affordable housing, we need to make sure that we have the capacity in our sewer system and we have the water that can handle these things.
Ricky?
Yeah, once again, water and sewer. We need to free up some availability at the sewer plant, especially the one that feeds the north end. We have a lot of existing homes that want to connect, and we should allow them to connect. And before we can do any major projects, especially affordable housing, we're going to need to free that up. The other thing that Rhode Island should be looking at, and Narragansett should be looking at as a whole, is this water issue. We have Bay Campus right in our back door. Desalination plant down at Bay Campus, being able to take the salt water and make it into fresh water and put it into a water tower. We are the ocean state. Water should not be an issue. And that's something we should be looking at for the future.
All right, Patrick, you're next.
Yes, that's number 10 in my Agenda 10 initiative to be voted on at the first meeting, if elected. Certainly water is critical for future generations. We should get a leg up on it. Clearly, water is becoming more and more of a commodity and needs to be a resource that all residents have access to year-round. Thank you.
Jesse?
Yeah, I agree with pretty much everyone. Water is the issue. Big issue in town. It's probably the most emails I receive from residents is about water, especially this year. I actually had it as number 9 on my agenda, so I guess it's a little bit more important to me than Patrick, number 10. But yeah, and you know, the problem really is that we just have no control over our water supply. We get it from North Kingstown, we get it from Suez, and until we change that, we're not going to be able to deal with the issue properly. So water, yes.
Okay, let's see. Steve, you're next. Yeah, Steve?
Yep, definitely water quality and sewage capacity. I know I've heard a lot of complaints too about broken water mains and things of that nature. I'd like to understand the age of the infrastructure across all lines, both with the water and sewage. As far as the desalination plant, that's an interesting concept. I think that's really an expensive venture, but if you can get the funding for it, the heck, Israel does that all year round.
All right, Win, you're up next.
I want to agree with everybody as far as the water and the sewer. The sewer in the middle of town, I think it's well over 100 years old now. Sewers should be expanded to probably as much area in the town as it possibly can to reduce pollution. We have water all around us. The pollution has to go someplace, and it just drifts down towards the waters, to the ocean, to Narrow River, to Salt Pond. Sewers are extremely important. The problem, on the other hand, with sewers is that you allow more, allow more building, you make more building lots available to be built on. So it's a juggling act with increasing the sewers capacity, increasing sewers, and restricting the development that you have throughout town. The water issues, obviously, we've had for the last few years, and they have to be addressed. Suez and our own water system. Thank you.
All right, Win, thank you. And Lori, you get the last word. Last word on the last lightning round question.
Yeah, and I agree with much of, most of the people. What I heard was water and sewage, and I would agree with that. I would say 10 years ago during the comprehensive plan, they had a lot of outreach to the community, and I was one of the people constantly bringing up sewage. And, there's too many houses in this town existing, not even talking about growth, that are not connected to sewer lines. And I was told, oh, it's way too expensive. And my response was, is it going to become cheaper? We have to look forward. We have to have enough water for our current community, not even talking about, growth in building or anything else. And we should have sewer capacity. We should be valuing the ocean that we live on, and we should be having sewer to protect our environment. Thank you.
All right. Well, listen, thank you all. That wraps up the
I didn't get to go.
lightning round, and I'm going to turn it back to Dennis.
I didn't get to go on that question.
Oh, I beg your pardon. I'm sorry.
That's okay. I'll be really quick. I really think there's a lot of different issues. We definitely need to support our business communities during the pandemic. However, I do agree with the water and the sewer. I do have a bunch of videos coming out. I studied the water issue for the past couple of weeks. So I will let everybody go to voteforeva.com and check out my videos that will be coming out this week. Thank you.
All right, Eva. Thank you. I'm sorry to have skipped over you. Okay, Dennis, back to you.
Thank you, Harry. So we will be going back to the drawing board on the term lightning round. We will need to reassess what we do name that little event that we just had. But I appreciate everyone's answers and thoughtfulness on the topics. We're going back now into the 2-minute response questions. And the next 2 questions we're going to do a little bit differently than the 3 candidates for 1 response, because we think the next 2 questions are very seminal to much of what's going on in policy and town within the last 2 years. So I think it's related to the library, and it's related to the fact that it truly was an all-consuming topic over the past 2 years, and quite different from many, many other issues that were raised. So we're going to ask the incumbents that are running for re-election, we're going to ask them a question. And then we're going to ask the 5 folks who are not incumbents the reverse side of that question. So that's what's going to take place in the next 2. So my question is going to be for Jill and Rick and Patrick and Jesse. And it states that oftentimes governing is described as reaching solutions through compromise. In your tenure over the past 2 years, there has been little to no progress on moving forward with the building or renovation of a town library. And the library topic has stirred the most animosity of any issue in recent history. So looking back, what would you have done differently to avoid the town being in this stalemate at this point in time? So Jill would ask you to respond first.
That's an interesting question, because unfortunately what happened during the process, well, let me start from the beginning. So we are constantly hearing about the will of the people and the 67%. So let's get away from that for a second and just talk about, did people really understand what they were voting for on that referendum? I voted for the bond thinking that I was going to be voting for a rehab of the current site. But what happened during the middle is all of a sudden lawsuits came. And the lawsuits clogged up the process and would not allow the town to govern, would not allow the elected officials. Remember, we're representative democracy. So the 5 people who are elected are the people that make the decisions. The decision to purchase the building came on the very last meeting of the former council. And the will of the people was the current 5 people that you see, the 4 of us here, and then Mr. Mannix. These are the people that did not really have the majority for the Belmont building. So it's been difficult, and it was even became worse as far as the lawsuits because we could not move forward with what this council wanted to do. What I would do differently, I would hope that someone had not put the lawsuits on to stop the progress of what this particular council wanted to do. I very much am looking forward to seeing what the results of the very clear question that's on the ballot. There's a ballot question that's not going to be able to be interpreted anything differently than yes or no. The question is this: do you want to have the Gilbane building, including the space currently occupied by the Pure Liquors, be made only into a library? So if the town says yes, then that is the way I would move forward. We'd say yes on that. If the town says no, then I'd like to have a workshop and take a look at either the community center or the existing site and find a library that meets our town tax needs as well as the needs of the town. And we need to keep in mind that the report that was put out that became this larger library incorporated 6,200 URI students into the population to talk about the size of that library. And there are a number of other things that weren't in that consultant's report. I'd like to be able to make sure that we can share the services that happen at our community center and senior center with activities that are currently at the current library. And I see Janine's red, so I'll stop.
So Jill, at the end, there's nothing you would have done differently.
Me personally done differently, again, I just wish that there hadn't been a lawsuit so we could have actually moved forward with selling the building.
Okay, thank you. Rick, same question for you.
Yeah, you know, we chatted several times that, about this, putting the building at the Belmont. Again, the question wasn't clear from day one. When I got looking into this so that the public understands, I look at the long term of this town. This is a facility that's going to be here. This is the next 100-year location and building. And when you look at that, you look at the center of town as a commercial piece of property. It's one of the best commercial piece of property we have left, and now we own it. The CAM fees, pulling it off the tax roll, to me, when you roll that out to a 100-year plan, it's millions and millions and millions of dollars that could be paying off something else and moving on with taxpayer money to do something else. We just could have done something differently. And we could have moved in that direction, and it would have been a lot more affordable to the town if we would have done that. So again, I am for a community center location if we're going to do something new, because it's going to be new construction. It's going to be the most innovative library you've ever seen. It'll probably be the best library in the state with what it'll offer. I just wish we were able to move forward, sell the building. Narragansett needs to be in hospitality and business down there. That's what it's about. That's what seems to be going on in the Boone Street community, and that's what we need to move forward with. Thank you.
So nothing different from you, Rick? Nothing you would have done differently?
No, Dennis.
Okay, thank you. So Patrick, if you could respond to that, please.
Yes, thank you, Dennis. Yeah, I mean, you know, I don't buy that the bond issue of 2016, where I didn't know what I was voting for. I just don't buy that. When 67% of the voting public that day supported a bond issue, I mean, we own the building. I mean, if you don't realize that the bond is for rehabbing that building, then and probably the same people who voted for me, right? They didn't know, they, you know, who is this guy? We don't know him, so let's vote for him, right? So as far as reaching across the aisle and trying to compromise, me and Jesse put out several initiatives, agenda items to reach over RFP for both locations and to get a cost on both locations, but that was denied. Mediation, that was another agenda item that we, you know, got shot down in a 3-2 vote again. And then a special election to finally solve the library question, up and down vote. do you want the library at the Belmont location? This is after we purchased it, and that was shot down. So I did try to reach across the aisle. I'm all about compromise. I believe any issue, we can meet halfway, get everybody's agenda in order, and come up with a solution. Thank you.
So just to get, since I asked the other two, looking back, nothing strikes you in terms of things you would have done differently?
The only thing I don't know how I could do anything different. I mean, I did everything I could to try to get a compromise.
Okay.
But,
okay.
you know, thank you.
Okay, thanks, Patrick. Jesse?
Thanks, Dennis. Yeah, I mean, like Patrick said, we did spend quite a while, many months working on some sort of compromise to just get a little bit of movement. In terms of what I would do differently, you know, there were definitely moments and periods where I think the behavior, myself included, of the council was not the most becoming of an elected official. So looking back, you know, I wish I could have been more composed at certain times, less emotional. You know, it's just something, I don't know if it would have made a difference, but it's just something that I think we should all strive to do. And I will say, Dennis, I will endorse you as the moderator of the next presidential debate, because you are doing a fantastic job tonight, keeping it civil. So I appreciate it. But yeah, I mean, I think that would be just general demeanor and respect, and just trying to be as civil as possible is something that I could work on, and probably all of us could. So thank you.
Okay, thank you, Jesse. So we turn to Harry for the corollary question.
All right, so this is the opposite question, and this question goes to those of you who are not on the council and hoping to win. So per the last question, had you been on the town council, what would you have done differently than the present town council to move beyond the impasse that has occurred over the past 2 years? So Steve, you get to start with the answers to that question. What would you have done different had you been on the council?
Oh, that's a good question. I mean, I definitely would have wanted to see that library go through. I think we could have talked more about costs on a basis where we could show the public exactly what would go into it, how much it would actually cost. I would have wanted to at least have gotten some contractors in there so the public would know more. We'd get some bids to see how much it would cost. I did sit down with Tiverton and their library, which is 24,000 square feet. I think we should have maybe pulled that in a little bit more, but it cost them 11 cents per 100. So it's not that expensive. Ours wouldn't be more, but I think I would have probably gone out to, I know that the library committee did, but I think as a town council member, I think I would have put on I think I'd probably put out better information on this on the cost basis. We talked about it, but I'd like to really have a cost breakdown to show through verifiable data what we're really up against. And it was a disappointment when we couldn't get contractors in there to actually look at it.
So better public disclosure of the cost option with the different approaches.
Definitely.
Okay, good. Okay, Eva?
Well, I would have followed the will of the people based on the 67% that voted for the library. I also, you know, when I talk to people that don't live in this town, when I tell them that the most divisive issue in town is the library, they just don't understand. And I've actually followed the issue for the past several years. And I've had discussions with people, and my husband, who has an architecture degree and a master's in urban planning. And we talked about the various locations, but I do agree we should have had real been able to get the real costs, but there are costs that are projected, and they do favor the Belmont building, which is the best location to have that library in. And what I would like to see going forward is, I think the ship has sailed for that being, you know, a retail use. Nobody's really, that building's been vacant for years. I would like to see that library there. I also would like to see our town hall. Like, our town hall needs a lot of work and it's in disrepair. Like, there's a lot of issues with it. I would like to see that pier area as a civic use area, and also see Boone Street as, you know, the retail area. Those are my thoughts.
you know, your answer, if I could paraphrase, is similar to Steve, but that you feel that it was, you know, should have been slated for the you know, Belmont building to begin with. Is that, am I quoting you correctly?
So that I think it should have been the Belmont building.
Yeah.
I do, based on all the actual cost that would be, that was the most cost effective of all the building sites that were proposed, based on all just, you know, the existing structure being there, and that, you know, once we move forward once the referendum will follow the will of the people, or the will of the people will be followed, whether it's in the Belmont building or not. But once we do move forward and get the costs, I'm sure it's going to show that the Belmont building is going to be the most cost effective solution for the library.
Win? Your turn, Win.
Thank you. I would have moved the library forward as long as I had the votes on the council. Again, like Eva said, 67% of the people voted for it. We've wasted hundreds of thousands of dollars delaying it for 2 years. Like, again, Eva said, the building has been vacant for 10 years. There's retail is, like she said, the ship has sailed on retail. Nobody's going in there. There's been proposals. There's been people walk in there, look at the building. It's done. It's going to become the centerpiece of town, actually. When you drive down Narragansett Avenue, you're going to see a brand new library building there. It's going to become very inviting to people coming to visit the town. The other thing is about the liquor store has been brought up. It signed a lease, 5 and a 5-year extension. They agreed to the lease. All the parties involved agree with the lease. They're there. So any vote on any referendum does not affect the library. They're there. Okay, so we have to get that out of the way. The other thing is, since I have 2 minutes, I put in a referendum to prevent the town from selling buildings. This referendum was presented, I think it was in April of 2019. Councilwoman Lawler asked the town solicitor if this concerned anything other than real estate. His answer was, it's only for real estate. You can go back and look, it's on YouTube. We can pull the YouTube video up. North Kingston has a limit of I think, $100,000 on theirs, but theirs is lease and sell. They don't have storerooms full of things to sell. They put things on the web or the government sale website, the same as the town of Narragansett does. To say that there's warehouses busting with stuff up there is just a flat out falsehood.
All right,
Okay.
thank you, Win. Lori, you're next.
I see a problem in going last here because there's so much I want to respond to.
Well,
And-
you're not last. There's one more, so.
Well, okay, but near the end. But Jesse, you spoke too soon to say, you know, no, the debate's going much better than last night, because here's where it blows up. You know, I think the big difference between, you know, most of my colleagues, my candidates out there in Zoom land who want to be on the council is that we're adults and we can sit at a table and we can work together. And that's no disrespect to Jesse or Patrick, who put out, by my count, something like 14 compromises. Let's have a special election. All the things that they went forward with. If I was in the minority, there's nothing I could have done as well as they did for that. So that would not be a change. Of course, I would have gone forward with the will of the people. I believe in democracy. I believe that people should follow what the voters of Narragansett want. And I find it ironic, quite frankly, that Jill says, well, this time we'll know what the initiative means. Because what I learned is that you can do whatever you want when you're on the council, because no one can enforce the initiative, just like no one could enforce the bonds without a lawsuit. So it is vitally important that everyone go out and vote for the initiatives in this campaign in November. But what I'm saying is it's even more important that you select your candidate carefully, because the people who follow the will and follow democracy are the people you want on the council representing you. And that is not the two councilmen who constantly say it's not really a democracy, or I did the best I can and I want to sell the building. So if you want the town moving forward, look around at the other people who are running, not just me, and vote for people who will support what you want in town. Thank you.
All right, Deb, you get the last word. What would you have done different?
First, I was so hoping Lori would get the last word, but a couple of things. First of all, I just want to make the point that there was 10 years worth of research that was done before this past council was, or actually up to when this past council was in office. So the information was always there and available for people to know. I think one of the most important things, though, Lori talks about democracy, which is important to me, is that one of the biggest problems that I saw and that I would do differently is I would maintain civility in every meeting. There were crazy blow-ups. There were people who were actually mocked and made to feel badly about their position. There was notion that the people who came to meetings were something like an angry mob, that it was I was at virtually every single meeting, and it was not pleasant to be there. It wasn't even valuable to be there in some instances. So I would have handled it differently. And I would have also considered deeply the will of the people based on the 67%. So I think that's about all there is to say about it.
You're basically more civility is what you think.
More civility, yeah, and more respect for the people who were in the room when discussions about the library were going on. The lack of any interest in compromise was also something that was disrespectful, I thought.
All right, thank you all. Dennis?
Yes, thank you, Harry, and thank the candidates for those answers. The next question is going to Lori Kelly, Rick Lima, and Jesse Pugh. Beach regulations and fee schedules over the past several years, such as the parking lot restrictions and proposed higher fees, have been weighed in favor of town residents. Are you comfortable with these changes? Have the changes gone too far, or have they not gone far enough? And if you could please explain. Lori, you would be up first.
So I do sincerely believe that the ocean belongs to everyone, not just Narragansett. And we're at a crossroads here with COVID. We do have to make inroads on restricting beach access because we have to limit, for social distancing purposes. So I can't say that I can design the perfect solution. I do have a lot of confidence in Steve Wright and his expertise to speak to other beaches around the country as to how things are implemented. What I am really unhappy with is that as a resident, I can buy transferable passes. And this year's workshop said, well, we're not making enough money, so why don't we raise that on the backs of the Narragansett people, $25 a pass. Now that seems to me an exorbitant amount, as Jesse pointed out, when you can't afford $33 for a library, which would be the tax base for the average person, tax increase for the average person. But each person who wants to buy that pass as a Narragansett resident, they have a huge increase. In this environment with COVID, we should be encouraging our families to go to the beach. We have families that are home for the first time in history together and can schedule recreational times. And like I said, we have a wonderful Parks and Rec and beach system that we should be utilizing. I do feel that there is a compromise to get other people on the beach as well. And if you talk to the restaurants, they were feeling the wrath of people who were turned away because of parking restrictions and many other things. So I would like to reanalyze that. I was not happy with the current changes that were made quickly in September with not any public input. Thank you.
Thank you, Lori. Rick, your perspective on that beach changes, restrictions, fees?
So I sit on I'm the liaison for the council on the Rec Advisory Board. And again, the Rec Advisory Board went out and did their research and their homework and confronted the residents of Narragansett on how they felt about the beach. And During COVID, yes, there were some restrictions that were implemented. They tried to keep the numbers down. There were only 2 days, July 4th, July 18th, that it went over 5,000. Other than that, there were some days at 4,000. And what they tried to do at the beach was, again, residents first. Our residents have the right to go to that beach first. It's Narragansett Beach. And if there's 3,000 or 4,000 residents that show up at the beach, and then there's another 1,000 or 2,000 non-residents that show up to the beach, we have to come up with a happy medium that is good for everybody. So again, the passes, $25 pass for a resident for the season, has not gone up. The parking, $50, has not gone up. The daily number of coming onto the beach, the daily fee, the Rec Advisory Board, through their research, thought that they would implement an increase. They would implement an increase to the daily amount to get onto the beach. We also had north and south lots, which are still resident onlys, and the west lot that non-residents couldn't park in. The non-residents now will be able to use west lot, and they will have a parking fee applied to that lot. This is also to allow the food trucks on the 2 nights that they're down there, a place for non-residents to be able to come, park, and support those small businesses. So the Rec Advisory Board is the one that did all the homework and the research, and they provided the information to Steve Wright with his staff to move this forward. And I do support the residents first. Thank you.
Thank you, Rick. Jesse, the beach question.
Thank you, Dennis. Yeah, I mean, the residents are always the priority at the beach. I think we all pretty much agree on that. It's a town beach. That's why we have our resident passes for $25 and the parking passes for $50. So much lower than non-residents will ever, be able to get on the beach for it, and they can't even get those passes. So that's clear that we all support the residents being the priority at our town beach. My issue with these policy proposals involve the timing of them, as well as some of the cost increases. So the beach closed about a month ago, and we're discussing these policy changes to be voted on next Monday. So that'll be 1 month after the beach closure. That is before we have the revenue numbers for the year. So we don't know what the bottom line was for the operation in general. That's also before the survey went out, the beach survey. So the survey went out after the recommendations were made. I'm not comfortable with, some lackadaisical surveying person by person, by rec advisory members. We should wait for that survey to come back. I think we should probably wait until the next council is sworn in, see where COVID is before we make any policy changes. There's really no reason to make them so soon. We have plenty of time before the next beach season. To me, this seems like it possibly is a political thing to get done before the election. And I've heard from multiple, 5, 6, maybe 7 businesses who are very, very upset with these increases because they struggled unbelievably this year, as we all know. They need next summer. They have to bounce back next summer, or some of them are gonna shut down for good. They need visitors to come in and use their restaurants and their businesses. And we need to have a balance in this town if we want to have businesses that exist at all, that we utilize. So.
Thank you, Jesse. Harry, next question for you.
All right. This next question is a topic that we've touched on earlier, but coming at it from a slightly different angle. And we're a little bit behind here, so I think we'd ask you and appreciate that you can get your thoughts on this out as as efficiently as possible. The question is, the rental businesses in Narragansett is estimated to generate $50 million a year in revenue, $50 million. Given the rental registration form is the sole source for gathering data and obligating landlords, in what ways would you change or add to the form? Why or why not? And Steve, Lynn, and Jill get this question, and Steve, you're first.
Yeah, I've looked at the registration form. I think it needs some updating in there. I do think we need to focus on the number of students, for example, that would be on the registration form, or number of guests in a house. I do think that the fee itself could be sort of a staggered fee. The $85, I think I've seen some houses that are, they're making $60,000, $70,000 a year, in my estimate, in some of these year-round rentals. I think the fee could be staggered. Probably maybe for affordable housing, I'd probably maybe waive a fee. For a 12-month rental, they have different categories on the form. For a 12-month rental, it could either leave it the same or lower it. But for rental properties, I would probably increase it, and definitely for year-round rentals, I would increase that probably substantially, probably in the neighborhood of $200.
Okay, thank you, Steve. Wynn, you're next on the list for that question. In what ways would you change or add to the form and why?
I like Steve's answers, to be honest with you. I don't think the form should go up unilaterally, because again, you're going to affect low-income people. But if you can, and then you have to deal with the state when you start dealing with putting any expenses on rental properties. We did the rental form. We did not get permission from the state. We just went ahead and did it anyway. Although we should have gotten permission from the state to start, because it's a tax on, there's no way other you can look at it. It's a tax on rental properties. $85, I don't think people scream about. We pay that for our low-income people who rent our house. You get up to 6 and 7, the multiple bedroom, the college students, you might be able to look at something. But once again, you have to do something that the state will allow, that you're not discriminating against one group of people against another group of people. So if you want to gather more information, that's a little bit different than raising the fees. If you want to put how many bedrooms are in the house or how many beds are in the house, it probably would be a better question as far as just bedrooms. There are things that you can garner from doing different questions, but I have to seriously look at the fees and see if the state would allow you to do a different fee structure.
All right, Wynn, thank you. And Jill, you get the last word on this question, on the rental registration form.
Okay, thank you, Harry. So I think that this rental registration form goes hand in hand with the bulk zoning ordinance. I would like to take a look at the fees. Again, anything that's year-round, I'd like to waive a fee for this. And I'd also like to add a few other items in. I don't believe there's enough information, and I believe it needs to be signed by the owner of the property by penalty of perjury. They're saying everything that they are writing is true. A couple of things that I would like to take a look at is having them provide us with insurance, making sure the property is insured, and making sure that that insurance is actually insurance for rental property. As many people may know, rental property insurance is much more expensive than regular homeowners insurance. We need to make sure it's properly insured. I'd like to take a look if we can look at zoning of other towns to see if potentially we could put in some type of parking issues, again, along with bulk zoning, so we don't have the issue of having our lawns in our neighborhoods just littered with cars. And last, but nowhere near least, I'd like to see that we have these rental properties inspected. I've discussed with our fire marshal that there's potential that he could write a grant to get a part-time fire marshal in. I know the university takes great care to make sure the student dormitories are safe and they have proper egress and the carbon and smokes are adequate and up to date. We don't have the same thing with our rentals here in town. We had a deck not long ago that fell apart and the students were on that deck. It's not going to be long until something happens at a rental property and then the town is actually sued because we have them on our rental registration database as knowing it's a rental property. To have a fire marshal go through every few years to make sure that everybody is safe, I think would be a great thing for our town.
All right, thank you all. And Dennis, over to you.
Yes, so this is going to be our last 2-minute response question, and it's going to go to Eva and to Deb and to Patrick. Another referendum on this year's ballot would add a recall provision whereby after 6 months in office, an elected official could be removed via a petition signed by at least 25% of those who voted in the last election. Do you agree or disagree with this referendum and why? So Eva?
I did agree with it. I actually signed on to that. One of the people that did sign on that. I just feel, again, that when we elect officials, I understand it's a democracy and that the town council members are making the best decisions for the town. But also, I think that we elect officials based on representing us in the right capacity and representing the will of the people. So in that aspect, yeah, I do agree with it.
Okay, thank you. Deb?
I also agree with it. I did a lot of research on this issue back when the referendum was being proposed, and found that other towns do have the same kind of idea in their language and structure. But one of the reasons is because, you know, things change with people who are in office. There can be things that go awry. There can be issues that crop up with an individual, and we have absolutely nothing in our legal structure in Narragansett that allows for that. So I think it's just a matter of doing something safely for the people of Narragansett. So I was in favor of it, and I continue to be in favor of it.
Thank you, Deb. Patrick, your response?
Yes, I do support a recall provision. Many towns across the country, city and towns, have a recall provision. It's not abnormal. In fact, if we had one this last term, I would probably start a campaign to recall myself after everything we've been through. So yes, I do support it.
Okay, thank you. So that ends the 2-minute response questions. We're now moving to something we call, this really is a lightning round. And it actually is, it's 2 questions. And you know what? I think that we have the mental aptitude here for you to answer both questions at once. So the 2 questions that are going to be asked of all of the candidates. The first question is, a third referendum on this year's ballot calls for the former Belmont building, now owned by the town, to be used as a site of the library. Do you support it? So that's question 1. The second question in the lightning round is it your intention to keep the liquor store in the old Belmont building for the long term? The long term being longer than the 5-year lease that's presently in place. So lightning round, Jill, we would ask you first to respond to those 2 questions.
Okay, so as far as the question you're speaking of, I just want to make sure this is the one you're talking about that states that the building in its entirety, including the property currently being leased by Pure Liquor, be only used for a library, Dennis?
Whatever the referendum says.
Number 4. Okay, so I do not support that because it does include the liquor store as well. As I stated before, I would if the town votes to have that the library is there, so be it. Then we'll go there. And I'm sorry, Mrs. Kelly, but this is an actual clear statement, unlike the unclear statement that was before the last bond. But I do want to sell the liquor store to the Manny family. I don't think the town should be leasing out a liquor store. It's just not good.
Okay, thank you, Jill. Rick, on those 2 questions, the third referendum related to Belmont and long-term prospects for the liquor.
Yes. Yeah, once again, in that referendum, it states the whole building. So no, I don't want to have the whole building to be the library. And again, I want to sell the property that the liquor store is in to the liquor store. The town should not be in the real estate business, and those people should have lifelong stability and put that money back into the emergency fund. Thank you.
Got it. Thank you. Patrick?
Yes, and yes.
Yes, supporting that. Yes, long-term prospects for the liquor store. Jesse, your perspective on those 2 things. You are on mute, Jesse.
Oh, I said such great stuff. I'll never be able to remember. So that question on the ballot, I will disagree with Jill and Ricky on the intent of that. It specifically says the former IGA building, former Belmont space, and the second story. It does not say the Pure Liquor space. So my understanding is that the Pier Liquor is excluded from that because it has been the Pier Liquors, and it could have said that in the ballot if that was included. As long as Belmont has been in that space, Pier Liquor has been in that space. So by leaving that out, I believe that this is specifically for the Belmont market space and the second floor. It will not affect Pier Market. So I do support that ballot question. And what was the second question?
Long-term prospects for the liquor store in Belmont.
Yeah, I support Pier Liquors staying in that space beyond
Okay. Thank you. Steve?
Yep, I'm going to be supporting that initiative. I think the language was clear when I voted. It was to acquire and renovate. That fits the Belmont building. I went back and I looked at the 2018 NPRA forum, and in there it was kind of crystal clear that the pretty much prior town council members and acknowledged by one in particular that it was Plan A all along, and there was a search for Plan B, which is the community center or the.
So you support the you support the.
I support the initiative on the ballot and I don't have any problem with the liquor store next to it either. Should they choose to leave in 5 years, that's their prerogative, but I'm okay with both.
Eva?
I'll keep it short. Yes and yes.
Thank you. Thank you. Win?
Again, yes and yes. The liquor store has a 5-year option. So they're there for 10 years. I don't know who's going to be on the council 10 years from now. I don't think anybody in this picture is going to be on the council. So they're going to deal with the liquor store then, and whatever they want to do going forward from that, it's up to the council then. It's up to liquor store owners then. So yes, I support both. Yes and yes.
Thank you. Lori, your position?
Yes, I support the initiative, and my reading of the initiative is it protects the entire property purchased by the town for a library. So that is the entire parking, right-of-way, everything. I support that wholeheartedly. The reason it came up, the reason the lawsuits went forward was because that's what we were looking for in 2016. Pier Liquors, I believe that issue has been put to bed because we Love Your Library and Pier Liquors had a negotiated settlement, which was the 5 and 5 lease, which the town council has now approved. So they will be there for the foreseeable future, but there is an end date on that lease. Thank you.
Thank you, Deb.
Yes and yes.
All right, thank you. That concludes the compressed lightning round. The last part of this forum is to allow the candidates to have a final minute to provide closing statements to the folks that are watching on the Zoom machine. So we're going to start with Patrick. We would like you to start first, please, for your minute summary.
Okay, thank you. I want to thank NPRA for having me here tonight. Good luck to all the candidates and all the folks at home. Okay, over the last couple of years, it's been very contentious on the council, throughout town, between the library issue and piling on COVID-19. I don't think it helped. People are frustrated with that. But each issue, whether it's beach access, parking, town beach, tax policy, summer, winter rentals. It seems over the last year or so, I mean, it all has to be either one thing or all another thing. All right, I'm all about compromise to find a solution that satisfies everybody's agenda. So please support me in November 3rd. And thank you for having me here tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Patrick. Jesse, we'd like to ask you to go next, please.
Thanks, Dennis. Thanks to the NPRA for putting it together and everyone for tuning in. And I wanted to thank, all the residents that I have spoken to through in person, email, over the phone, at council meetings, just everyone in the community. It's been an enjoyable 2 years on the council, which may seem hard to believe at times, but it has been. I am hopeful for the next term. I'm hoping to get on the council, and I'm hopeful that we'll be able to get quite a few things done. We've made it to certain points with, with different agendas in town, but there's still a lot of refining that has to be done. There is a lot of work that kind of we got distracted from this year because there was the overwhelming library issue. So one thing that I do want to say will be the first thing on the agenda is to bring back open government in Narragansett. Transparency and civic engagement is key. So we're going to bring open forum back to the beginning. We're going to allow public comment on all agenda items. And we have a few other things as well. I see the red, so thanks, Janine, and thanks everyone else.
Thanks, Jesse. Steve, your closing statement.
Thank you, and thank you, NPRA, for putting this on. All I'd like to say is that if you want a fresh look at the governance and finances of the town, then perhaps you'll consider voting for me. For those of you who have already, and I've met some of you in person, I really appreciate your vote. I must reiterate again that the fact that we've had an unprecedented number of candidates running for town council this time around just shows you how the town feels about the current atmosphere. So I have the time and the experience and the dedication to serve on the next town council. And I'd like to also say that it was great to see younger candidates like Michael Millen Jr. and Megan Murray campaigning for the first time. I hope that they remain involved in the political process and return in 2 years again to run again. I think we need more people, young people in town with passion and vision to get involved in the future of our community. I think it's time for a fresh start and a fresh point of view. And if you believe in that, then I appreciate your vote.
Steve, thank you. Eva, if you could do closing statement, please.
Yes. Thank you, NPRA, for putting this on. It's really great to be able to speak to the voters out there. I know this is probably the only time that they're going to get to see us speaking. Thank you to the candidates who participated. It's great seeing you here, even though it's on Zoom and not in person. I have talked to a lot of you. I know a lot of you, and I wish you all the best of luck. What I will tell all the voters out there is that I'm very sincere. I will honestly tell you that I will admit I may not have all the answers or all the right answers at any given time, but what I will commit to is finding the right answers. And as a scientist and a pharmacist, I do that. If I don't understand an issue, I study it, whether it's, I actually want to understand the side that I don't agree with and find out what it is that I don't understand. So what I will commit to you is that I will always make the best decisions, data-driven, and the best decisions for the town. And my slogan is for the people, for the town, and I promise you that will be all I ever do. Thank you.
Thank you. Win.
Yeah, I want to thank you guys as well. A couple things I'll touch on. I haven't been out knocking on doors or still have 2 days left of my quarantine here. I've had COVID the last 2 weeks, or I got diagnosed 2 weeks ago. So, but I'm healthy, moving forward. Now, what I'd like to ask for everybody's vote. I think I know enough about the town. I've been here long enough, and I've been involved with many, many aspects of the town. And I know the history of the town as well. So I would like to ask everybody's vote. And again, I'd like to bring civility to the town council. I think I'm a fairly level-headed guy. I don't yell and scream. And Dennis, I didn't get a chance to talk on the recall provision. I guess you only had 3 people talk on that. There was a short 2-minute session there. Thank you.
Thank you, Win. Lori?
Thank you, and thank you for putting on this forum. I'm running for council. I hope to get on council. I have been very involved in the town for the last, 10 years, 4 years going to every council meeting. I have a lot of insight as to the way the town prepares their financial documents, the way they should be taping workshops and posting for more, transparency in the government should be provided for everyone who lives in the town. I do believe the council, this new council, whoever it will be, should sit down together and set priorities. And those priorities should be led, followed throughout the term so that we all agree on what we're doing. I believe meaningful workshops with substantive ideas are exchanged, and that the council, the new council, should be acting like adults with civility and decorum. Thank you.
Thank you. Deb, your closing statement, please. Deb, you're still on mute.
Again, the mouse. I, like Jesse, said some really good stuff there. Thank you again to the NPRA for providing us with an opportunity to speak both to each other and also to our constituency. I decided to run for Narragansett Town Council for many reasons, not the least of which was that we have to resolve the library issue because we need to move on. Rather than continuing in the vein of the past 2 years, I absolutely will work hard to restore civility and transparency, starting by supporting the move of open forum back to the beginning of meetings and ensuring that our citizens, residents, voters, and the public at large are treated with the respect we all deserve. I look forward to working on supporting coastal access, introducing measures related to problems from climate change, to reviewing our current zoning and planning requirements in relation to environmental, residential, and natural resource concerns. I believe water, both drinkable and general usage, are at a critical stage, and I would support working on a new realistic plan, especially after the drought Narragansett has suffered this year. I hope that people will vote for me, and if they agree with my priorities and what I believe is vital to Narragansett, I expect that they will. So thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you, Deb. Jill, your closing statement.
Thank you, Dennis. Thank you to the peer residents for hosting this forum. Really appreciate it. I just really want to kind of reiterate my top points and also ask you to please visit jilllawler.com where they'll all be laid out for you. My residents come first. That's going to be the prevailing thing for me, protecting our neighborhoods, regulating Airbnb, finding some way that we can put some more teeth into the rental registration database so that our neighborhoods can be residential neighborhoods and not really be just dormitories for university. Fiscal responsibility, making sure that we spend wisely. We need to take a look at our road bond. We need to run out for roads. Our roads are really bumpy. Our prize of our town beach, we need to make sure we can keep it. Erosion is happening because too many people are getting on the beach. We need to work with URI and to make sure that our beach is used by our residents first and priority. And above all, and something that I'm happy to hear everyone mention tonight about civility and decorum, because as everyone knows, I did introduce a motion this last year about that specifically. Yes, Devin, I know you just reacted to that as well, but it was voted down. And I do believe that we need to have a decorum in town, not only for counselors, but also for the audience, because respect goes both ways. And I'm glad to hear that everybody here is in agreement with that. Thank you.
Thank you, Jill. Rick, your closing statement.
Yes, I want to state that I'm running for re-election. There is evident that there's a lot more to accomplish in our town. I will make residents a priority, protecting our neighborhoods from rental investments, from overdevelopment, not creating parking areas to out-of-towners for water access points in these neighborhoods, preserving our beach, keeping residents first, supporting small business, properly funding police, fire, and education, maintaining roads and infrastructure, and keeping our taxes low. We need to continue to make Narragansett our home, and I ask for people to vote for me on November 3rd. I'm number 5 on the ballot, and please visit my website, ricklima.com. Thank you.
Thank you, Rick. And that concludes the formal part of the meeting. Very, very much appreciative of all of the candidates who took the time out to prepare and to conduct the forum tonight. I'd like to thank also Janine did a great job as a timekeeper. Harry and I would like to thank all of our fellow board members who worked on the the social media stuff and the marketing and the technology of putting this together. And we certainly appreciate everyone who tuned in tonight. It will be posted on YouTube tomorrow, hopefully by tomorrow. And most of all, I think NPRA wanted to play a small part in giving appropriate information and insight into the candidates that they'll be voting for in November. So thank you very much, and that concludes the forum. So good night.
Thank you, Dennis.
Thank you to all in the end.
Good
Thank
night.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you.
Good
Yeah.
night.